Okay, good. I might put something to chat like, Mark, don't ask me such hard questions or something like that.
Please don't.
Okay, good evening from Table Tennis Scotland. My special guest tonight is no stranger to Table Tennis Scotland. He won a Commonwealth medal here. Last year, he directed our summer school and he's represented England at all levels. He is now an established TV commentator and a coach. His son, Sam, is an England international, and his other son, Adam, is a qualified coach. So it's welcome to Colin Wilson.
Hi, Dave. Thanks for having me. Nice to be back.
Good. We're also joined by two Scottish internationals and coaches in Chris Main and Pete Lugden. Both have been on the show before. And what have they all got in common? They are all left-handers. My right-hand man, and the only other right-hander in the group, is national player and selector Mark Lumberg. Perhaps we should have had this Zoomcast on August the 13th. That would have been clever because that is International Left-Handers Day. Now, what I'd like to do is, before I hand you over to all these experts, I want to combine three of our Zoomcasts together. And I'm going to look at coaching, I'm going to look at parenting, and I'm going to look at left-handedness. Back in the 80s, I was asked to coach Juliet Houghton and Andrew Houghton at the English Schools tournament. They needed to get into the top four. If they got into the top four, it meant they could play in the England A team. If they finished any lower than that, it was in the hands of the gods. Now, we all went along in my car, along with Juliet and Andrew's dad, Ted. And Ted was a professional, a semi-professional footballer and a high-class cricketer. So he also played table tennis. So he was a very good all-round sportsman. But it was an absolute bag of nerves bringing in the parenting when Juliet and Andrew were playing. So we arrived at the venue. Andrew was playing in the under-13s. Juliet was playing in the under-16s. They both had groups where they probably should have won. Andrew went on first. After the first game, he said, "Oh, can you ask my dad to move? He's fidgeting, he's pulling faces, and he's putting me up." And I said, "Look, Andrew, he just wants you to win." So Andrew won anyway. So I went to Juliet, exactly the same. Juliet said, "Oh, I can see my dad after every point. He's playing every point, and therefore I feel as though I've got two opponents." So I said, "Look, you really have to just concentrate on the match." Anyway, this went on throughout the group. Poor Ted, it was shaking like a leaf watching his two kids play. And so neither Juliet or Andrew were happy with this. Ted wasn't happy, but he was in the hall. And then as a coach, I said, "Right, Ted," I said to Juliet and Andrew, "It's up to yourselves. Just get on with it because I'm taking Ted away from here." So I took Ted, believe it or not, to watch Leicester City versus Nottingham Forest. And we went to watch that. Ted was completely relaxed in the car, forgot about table tennis. And when I came back, we sat in the stand and there was just doing the presentation. So we didn't know who'd won. And we didn't know. So it said in third place in the under-13s was, can't remember now, Andrea Holt or whoever it was. And in second place, and then Ted says, "Oh, Juliet hasn't made the top four." And the winner of the under-16 girls is Juliet Houghton. Then they did the cadet presentation. And again, we just didn't know what had happened. And in third place, whoever it was, and in second place, and the winner was Andrew Houghton. So sometimes as a coach, it's not always about sitting at the edge of the table. It's trying to do the right thing at the right time. So Andrew won the under-13s English schools. Juliet won the under-16s schools, and they were both left-handers. There we are. Anyway, that's a little story to start off with. Now, left-handedness. I'll start with Colin. When did you first realise you were left-handed?
Okay. Well, I guess I was left-handed before I realised I was left-handed. And as a nipper, I would have written with my left hand. I write very much with my left hand, not my right. But I wasn't really aware of it. But from quite an early age, I think the topic came up because my dad was left-handed with some right-handed things, and I've got a big brother, 5 years older than me. He was right-handed. So I guess we talked about it. But my dad being a bit of both, it became a thing rather than me being weird. So I never thought of myself as a weird or disadvantaged or anything, but I think I probably became aware of it at the age of about 5 or 6. And certainly by the time I started playing table tennis when I was 9, I realised I was a left-hander, and pretty much immediately I started playing table tennis. It was kind of obvious to me that the angles of the table were different when it was me against someone as to watching two right-handers, I guess.
Good. Okay, Chris, same question to you.
Yeah, I think I'd probably be the same with Colin there. I think I was asking my mum today when, like, I kind of noticed, and I think when Richard, my younger brother, who's 3 years younger than me, he writes with his left hand, but everything else he does with his right hand. So I think when he was starting to write, he was copying me. He obviously seen his big brother write with his left hand, and I think I was asking my mum at that time when I was maybe 4 or 5 that, oh, Richard's doing football was his right foot. Why is he doing this with his left hand? So I think it was probably about the same age as Colin, 5 or 6, that I started to realise when I go to school, everybody else was writing with their right hand, and was maybe only 2 or 3 people in a class that was writing with a left, and obviously I was one of them. So I think starting primary school, you started to realise that you're maybe a bit different to the vast majority of the other students.
Yep. Okay, and Pete, same question for you.
Dave, first of all, can I just say big honour to be on the question and answers. A lot of legends have come on before this, so it's a big thing to be asked. Also, congratulations to you, Matt, and to Mark for such a fantastic Q&A. You're doing this every week, and the amount of time and effort that goes into this is superb. So a big well done. So that's my tuppence worth. Okay, you can give me the £5 later. Yes, getting back to, I mean, to be honest, I can't remember. It's too long ago. When I first noticed that, I think I'll put it in the context of when I first started playing table tennis. So I started when I was quite late, started about 14 years old when I picked up a bat and got spotted. So, and again, even then when I was practicing and playing, I didn't really notice too much around me that there was others, you know, I was the only left-hander. It was really when it came to competitions and tournaments when I started thinking, oh, there's a lot of people, you know, there's obviously a lot of big bias to the right-handed side. And that was when it sort of occurred to me that I was in the minority. And this could be, it's a potential advantage that I could, you know, use to my side. So that was really, so I'm putting it in the table tennis context, but a bit later. I'd probably be with the guys and saying that, yeah, I was left-handed when I was writing. I play, well, I'm trying to think of other sports, badminton, snooker, all left-handed. I tend to be right-footed when I play football, so, and right-handed when I play golf. So it's a bit of a mismatch there. So yeah, that would be just a quick synopsis.
Good. Okay, then that's well, I'll go for the second one and then I'll bring in Mark. Has it been an advantage or disadvantage in life, or neutral? Colin?
Yes, it has been an advantage and a disadvantage in life. It's been both. As I say, it's never felt like a big deal. Slight disadvantages. Some things are not built for left-handers. Scissors, can openers, camcorders, holding them all the buttons on the wrong side, so you accidentally turn it off. But the worst part was using an ink pen, being forced in primary school to write using an ink pen. And when I used an ink pen, being a left-hander, my hand would write and then or rather my fingers would write, and then my hand would smudge the ink as I went past it. So a lot of left-handers kind of write over the top. My friend and rival Graham Sandley, who was same age as me, growing up, I could see he wrote like this, and I thought that looked ridiculous. But I was the one that used tons and tons of blotting paper when we were trying to write, and I wonder whether that's why left-handers are famously scrawly. I don't know what the evidence is, but I hear that left-handers are famously scrawly in writing. So a few disadvantages, but if you're going out with a right-handed girlfriend, you can walk down the street hand in hand, and you match up nicely. So you got a nice right and left-handed combination. So a bit of mixed doubles there has worked for me in the past. That's okay. And what else in terms of advantages? I don't know really. People have remarked that I'm left-handed, but it's not been an issue for me, and certainly I wouldn't go for intersectional disadvantage as a result of being left-handed and something else. Good. Chris, same to you.
Aye, yes or no, Colin. That's well put. But I think I don't think it's made this. I think it's easier if you're right-handed because everybody else is right-handed, and obviously things are made for right-handers. Like I play golf. Golf's my only sport that I play right-handed. But buying a guitar, like I'm sure when I was 12, 13 years old, my mum and dad wanted to buy me a good guitar, and then they're having to pay £100 more for the exact model that was right-handed because left-handed guitars aren't made, or sometimes you have to play the guitar upside down, or with golf, I don't know. A few things that annoy you slightly, even like scissors. I know scissors are better now than what they were back then, but when I was younger, I used to always have to ask the primary school teacher could you pass me the left-handed scissors, please? So just wee things that you get used to, and it's fine. But I don't know if I would go as far as saying it's a disadvantage in life. Like, I think it's an advantage in sport, and obviously we'll talk about that. But I think that's my answer.
Good. And Pete, same with you. Has it been an advantage or disadvantage in life, or just neutral?
I'd say pretty much the same as the guys. I mean, I had to rack my brains to think where I was put at a disadvantage when you asked the question. Obviously, you've got your DIY tasks that are always going to come up. So with me, I'm like Frank Spencer anyway. So even if I was right-handed, it would be a disaster. So advantages. If we're getting back to sport, I would have thought that being a left-hander is probably an advantage in sport, in table tennis, because you're in the minority and you're doing things that are different from right-handers, all different angles and everything. So yeah, in the context of sport, I'd say it's a big advantage.
Okay, right. We'll have a little break from that. I'm going to hand you over to Mark. Mark's going to. Well, I don't know what Mark's going to say, but
Mark. I'm just conscious that we don't turn it into the sob story of the left-hander. Left-handers, life's more difficult, but I'm glad Chris sort of confirmed that it's not. And also just a remark on what Colin said about the sort of pen. I mean, I thought like Dave, you'd be using a quill and feather back then. So
it was. We had to dip into an ink pen.
Oh, yes, it was right then. Yes, so that was the.
That's how old I am.
I was just wondering what it was like. We just obviously throw it in table tennis terms. You are all coaching, so it's obviously something you've all done. So bringing back to coaching days, a young boy or girl comes into the hall, and they can play right-handed or left-handed. As a coach, what would you encourage them to do? Because obviously being left-handed yourself, would you actually turn around and say, actually in table tennis, it's more advantage to be that left-hander? Or would you let them make their mind up, or would you push them into playing left-handed? Colin?
Okay, I've had this, especially with very young ones. The youngest in our club was 3, standing on a chair, done quite safely with mum, and they were just kind of picking it up with one or the other. And it's the period before, they have to say, well, 2 forehands down the line, 1 across to their backhand or whatever it is. And I would purposely make no comment or encouragement either way. So I would just say, I'd put the bat down right in front of them, dead neutral, and just say, okie doke, let's pick up the bat then. Once we've sort of said hello and done what we need to do in the prep, this is the sport, just pick it up. And they might pick it up and they have a little hit, and I think, oh, they're a left-hander. and then the next thing I know, they've switched to the other hand and they're playing right-handed. And so I would typically not mention it at all. Let them decide, and try to avoid situations where I'm saying, right, now we're going to practice backhand. Because I do a lot of feeding with my right hand, low level, and I purposely avoid, kind of creating diagonals where it's clearly backhand to backhand. I just go down the center of the table or something and just say, right, I'm going to do that. You do the same thing, and let them pick it up themselves, and let them choose and get into a preference over time.
Perfect.
And that's a decision that I've made, not to encourage it one way or another. That's just a philosophy that I had.
Chris, would you do the same, or would you be more encouraging?
I think like if I'm getting into a school and I'm teaching like 30 kids table tennis, I think I would probably I would say to the guys, right, just before they pick up the bat, right, okay, whatever hand you write with, or whatever hand you play sports with, that's the hand, like, just as a conversation goes. And then the vast majority, or even a lot of the time, I get into a school and then I kind of joke that I'm left-handed, and I'll say, oh, so how many kids are left-handed here? And I'm like, all right, okay, we've got 4 left-handers. So I think I always put that in there. But I think if I was coaching, and I was coaching like on a one-to-one basis, and I was walking around the table speaking to the kids, I would always say, "Are you holding the back correctly there?" And they would maybe say something like, "Oh, like what, some kids maybe 5 and 6, they don't even know what left and right is. Some of them." So it's like, "Oh, okay, we'll go. You're more comfortable holding it in that hand, or you're more comfortable holding it in this hand." So I think if I was addressing the group, I think I would, just to start with, say, if you like with your left or play sports with your left, hold it there. But if I was going round on a one-to-one basis, I would have a wee conversation with them and to make sure they're comfortable with what hand they're holding the bat in.
Perfect. Pete?
If they're not left-handed, they can just leave the hall.
That's it. So every kid at Gaddington,
more left-handers playing table tennis.
Yeah.
I'm the same as the guys. We did a lot of tasters where we would have 30 kids in front of us in the class, and you would tell them the shake hand grip, the basics, and then you would go along with the bats. And yeah, it's whatever bat they're going to naturally just put their hand out. That's really the way it has to be. I know of a couple of players, and back in the old days, I'll say the 80s or 90s, 80s probably, and one that was forced, one I knew that was in Edinburgh, was forced to play with his right hand. He was a natural left-hander, but he was made, I think, by his parents to play with his right hand.
Yeah, I've known that, and they played to a very good level. I've known that one as well.
Yeah.
Costas Papantonio, Dave.
Yeah, remember him, yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, Pete. But, yeah, it has happened. And he got to, what, 5 in England juniors?
Yeah.
Playing right-handed. And whenever we had a little left-handed competition on a training camp, he would absolutely wipe the floor with all of us when we just had a mess around with the wrong hand.
Yeah, so whether you're dabbling there with, it's everyone to their own. Everyone to their own. Like you say, the player might, if just encouraged to play with their other hand, but it just doesn't seem. It's got to be, for me, it's got to be a natural. You put your hand out, that's the one you're going to play with.
Natural choice.
And your two, can I just do a follow-up question to Colin? Your 2 boys, Colin?
Yeah, both of them play right-handed, Dave.
Yeah, and was that obvious from the start, or?
Yeah, I'd say that, you find that out before they play table tennis. But to be honest, in Sam's case, the younger one, I had a bat in his hand before he had anything else come out of the womb. So a bat was pretty much the first thing he had before a pen.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, but they're both clearly right-handed, and funnily enough, Kim, the missus, is left-handed.
All right. Two left-handed.
Yeah,
right.
got to make sense of the heredity.
Yeah.
Yeah, weird.
Mark, have you got another one?
Yeah, I was wanting to go on to basically about like more tactics on the table. So obviously, all 3.
Well, I do what, Mark. Shall we don't forget? Shall we give Colin his quick fire?
Yeah, do you want to do that? We'll do that first then. Okay, no worries.
Yeah, let's
Oh my word!
He doesn't know what. Got to answer quickly, Colin.
All right, I'm no good at that.
The questions created by our own Peter Shaw, which has done the rounds now.
Now I know I'm in trouble.
Quick fire. So,
Okay.
Colin, was your style spin-based, power-based, or were you in between, 50-50 style?
More spin than power.
Timing, do you take the ball early, top of the bounce, or after?
Early, just before peak or earlier than that, if I can. I tended to be quick and not as powerful as others, so that's why I took it early.
Your most effective or strongest stroke?
Backhand loop off the bounce against the loop.
Least
He's
effective.
nodding, that's good.
Yeah. Least effective or weakest stroke?
Forehand block from a right-hander having run around their backhand corner.
From any player, the one stroke you wish you had?
Japanese guy serve, can't remember his name.
Your best or favourite serve?
Tomahawk. Little top spinner that looked like a chop. They just flick it off the end.
You're the best server you've ever received against. So it would be the Japanese player, would it be?
No, never played them. Best server.
Right.
Dragutin Srbek. Not because the serve was winning the point outright, but it got him into a position where he'd get this booming great forehand in afterwards.
Tricky. Your favourite opponent type? A defender, spinny player, blocker? Defender.
Give me a chopper. Give me a chopper any day.
Your least favourite opponent type?
Flat counter hitter. Means that I've got to lift it and I've got to put more legs into it.
The best player you've ever played against?
Jürgen Persson and Janove Waldner. Oh, and Teng Yi.
That's just showing off now, isn't it?
I beat one of them. Oh, Ulf Bengtsson, European champion, beat him the year before he won the European men's. Sure. I wasn't that good, everybody, but just a chance to show off.
The victory that gave you the most pleasure?
Carl Preen, British League. He was when he was 20 something in the world. Dougie Johnson when he was Dougie Johnson the chopper when he was in the England team, and I showed that I could beat choppers defenders.
The player that you most admire, and that's your final question.
Player that I most admire, Jürgen Persson. I don't know why, but he's chosen to be a friend to me his whole life, despite the fact that I only spent two summers in Sweden, and he was already tons better than me, even though he's younger than me, and went on to win the World Championships. So always a lovely, lovely guy, really relaxed, and knew how to play and knew how to win. I don't know how he put all that together throughout a 30-year career. Stunning.
Brilliant. And I think, in my opinion, Dave, that might be one of the best quickfires you've had. I really liked his answer. Really good.
Yeah.
That's exhausting, that is.
Yeah.
Under pressure now. Well, I'm just going to ask Chris and Pete if they've got a question for Colin. At the moment.
How do you return it yourselves?
How did I return?
When I was playing you at Inverclyde, I think I struggled again. I think you get 3-4 points a set off yourself.
Okay, I tended to be quite good on return of serve. My touch was okay, and my favourite return of serve actually was a just under half long push. So I'd go forehand, and I'd go to flick it, and then I'd touch it, and I'd touch it short, keep it low, but do it just long enough that you can't quite loop it.
Yeah,
that was my favourite one. And then they would either attack it very softly with a flick, or they'd try and keep it short, would fail, and I'd get in on the fourth ball.
Yeah.
That's my kind of stock in trade.
That's good.
Serve, really. It's not the most aggressive, but...
Colin, yeah, when you were playing chop, so you say take a chopper any day. I had the pleasure of playing Matthew Side at the Commonwealths. Yeah. And I've never experienced backspin like it in my life.
Really?
Really, really tough. I mean, the ball was just fizzing and fizzing.
Yeah.
How did you manage to lift heavy chop? How did you manage to lift it?
Right. Really, really interesting, because it wouldn't work now. But I used to practice with Matthew. I think I'm maybe about 8 years older than he is. So I was coming to the end of my career when he was coming up. So there's a little patch where we're about the same, and then he got better than me. But when he was a nipper, I was quite a bit better than him. So I played him, before in the middle of his improvement and then at the end. I wasn't the most powerful player, as I said, but I could spin, I could control, I could move things around. So I would play with variation. And so quite often, the heavier you spin it, especially against a long pimple, the heavier you spin it, the heavier it comes back. So typically, I would roll to the pimple, quite fast sometimes, but mix the pace and try not to give them too much topspin. So I picked the ball up just before peak to give myself the best angle and hit it as flat as I could. And generally speaking, if I went fast topspin to the forehand, they chop. And then I would go fast and flat to the backhand while they were away from the table. And then they're having to hit the ball very hard because of the slower sponge. And they're having to hit it hard. And then they can't get as much backspin on it anyway. So I'd avoid the heavy chop. But when I got the heavy chop, I was fine at spinning it up. But generally speaking, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't spin up heavy against the chopper. I would go fast and then drop shot, and then I'd go fast again, and then I might roll 2, 3, 4. The thing is, in this day and age, all of the choppers, and I teach Sam the same, my son, is that some of those rolls, they might pop up a little bit, and they come in and boot it with a big attack. Choppers are more aggressive than they used to be. And I say to Sam, if anybody mentions the word defense or you're a defender, don't ever use that language. There's nothing defensive about what you do, Sam. You are maximizing the probability of winning the point with your chop or with a hit, and it's got nothing to do with defense. People call that, a backspin stroke, a defensive shot. And I said, that is not the object. The object is to be as aggressive as possible. And yes, sometimes you do a float and try and encourage them to put it off the end. But I could lift it, but I wouldn't want to put myself in lots of trouble against it.
Dave, just to come in, just about that, I think it's a good point just from a tactical question, just about like the forehand dominance of a left-handed player. So famously, Gatien, 93 world champion, and it's quite famous as if you watch Gatien play, not much a backhand, probably 10 times better than any backhands, but generally such forehand dominant where, let's say 80% of his play was on the forehand. But from your guys' perspective, and I think this advantage of chop as well, of getting your strongest stroke in, which is a forehand, the left-hander. But it's just to put that, interesting your point. Just obviously regarding that, about why it seems to be, and maybe you'll correct me, where a left-hander does go towards forehand dominance compared to a right-hander. Colin?
Me? Okay. I'm not sure, Mark, that's the case. Certainly in my case, it wasn't. If I say to Dave, was I backhand or forehand dominated? What would you say, Dave?
60-40 forehand, probably. I wouldn't say he's 50-50. Would you?
Okay. I always felt more comfortable with my backhand. I think I had a backhand dominated career. I would want people to attack into my backhand, and I'd distribute the ball around. So I felt backhand dominated. I'd run around, but not all the time. And I'm not sure about the evidence about forehand players being left-handers being more forehand dominated than right-handed players. When you see it, and let's say 1 in 10 are left-handed or something, probably more at a higher level. We can talk about that. There's evidence about that and research into it. But you notice it if a left-hander's going around and playing forehand from the backhand corner. I'm not sure overall if that is true that left-handers do that more than right-handers do. Chris and Pete, as left-handers, do you think left-handers run around and play more forehand dominated maybe? And
with like now, because everybody's trying to come in and play backhand flicks, I think the first shot now is more backhand flick. I think for me, as growing up, I think my first, because I'm playing right-handers all the time, they're 7 into my forehand area. I think my first shot is usually forehand flick, forehand touch, and then I maybe try and back it up with forehand after that. I think that's how I would put it. If I was playing a lefty, for example, and it was playing from the other corner, I think those rallies are going to be a bit more backhand orientated for me, because the server's 7 into my backhand. I'm maybe playing cross court the vast, or 60-70% of the time, and then I need to be ready. I feel if I'm playing a lefty, I feel I need to be ready to play more backhands. If I'm playing my righty, I feel I can try and get my forehand in a bit better, and I think that's my answer there. That's just my personal experience. So
I like Chris is saying, is it more of a modern thing that even left-handed attacking players are maybe playing a bit more in their backhand and bringing their backhand? Because back in the day, I think, running round on the forehand was quite a trait for a left-hander. Whether that was just myself and wanting to run around a lot and play a forehand, could be that. But yeah, it's a more modern thing that they're more want to bring in their backhands.
I think my observation of it would be that when you look at Zuzin, who's obviously amazing to watch, obviously such forehand dominance, but obviously because maybe a penholder. So actually getting in his movements superb. Gatian over the years, but actually we're talking about two different type of players there that actually on a sort of club player that we always like to go back to, or maybe there isn't that forehand dominance. But it seems that perception, and I think I'm maybe going back to coaching of not me coaching, but seeing other coaches in the past of trying to encourage left-handers to get the forehand in. But actually, I think the point is that it's maybe moved on. The game's moved on because of the backhand, the banana flick. That actually the whole dynamic of a table has completely changed.
Yeah, and the faster equipment, faster bats, faster rubbers, pre-boosted glues, or pre-boosted rubbers. That's all made it faster, which has helped, I think, people generally on the backhand. I love the old bicycle glue on the backhand. It was great. I was one of the last to use it at all because people were putting it on the forehand back in the day, but not on the backhand because they said, "Oh, I need it for control." But once I started using it on the forehand, I thought, well, why not use it on the backhand as well and just darn well control it? So, that worked for me. So having the quick equipment made my backhand really. So that was interesting. But something's come up on the chat actually about as left-handers, are you guys also left eye dominant? Now, I know that about 18% of the population have got the dominant eye and their dominant hand different, and I'm one of those. So I wonder whether I feel a bit more even between forehand and backhand because I'm right eye dominant. So if I play snooker left-handed, but I've got to stand like that to get my right eye behind the cue. And the evidence is that if you've got cross dominance, so you've got a different eye to a different hand, your reaction time is about 10% slower. So although I was an early player and thought of myself as having good reactions, if I'm an average member of the population, my reaction time is 10% slower because of that effect. The other thing about the eye dominance is that because I'm right eye dominant, I'm really happy when the ball's coming to my backhand. I can see it coming at me. When the ball comes to my forehand, I turn and my nose is in the way if I want to really watch it onto the bat. So I had to learn to see it and then start my stroke without seeing the last bit because my conk's in the way. So I do think there's something there about whether you're backhand or forehand dominated depends upon which hand you hold the bat with and which eye you're dominant with.
Interesting. Very interesting.
Right. Mark, have you got a follow-up there? Or
No, I'll hand back to you, Dave, just for your questions. There's also more questions later on, but I think if you carry on with these questions that we've looked at before.
Yeah, I just wonder in Colin's case, and I sort of followed Colin's career from the age of about 14 until he retired.
Mostly in my corner, Dave. Thanks very much.
I know, but you had superb balance, and when you played football, you had superb balance. And I don't think I've seen people hit the ball past you, but I don't think I ever saw you off balance at all. I don't ever think.
Now you tell me.
Don't ever think I saw you play a bad shot. You might have missed the shot, but you was never sort of bouncing up and down. Your head was still, and maybe that helped you be a two-sided player because you had very, very good, superb balance, absolutely superb.
Oh, cheers. Maybe that's right.
Yeah. Okay. Interactive sports such as table tennis, badminton have an overrepresentation of left-handedness. Anybody can take that. Do you think that's true?
It's not.
It's not.
In the vast majority of sports, there is an over representation of left-handers at a high level.
Yeah.
But golf, if 10% are left-handed on average, and I realise that gets corrupted because some people are left-handed at one thing and right-footed at another, and there's a bit of crossover between them. You know, not everybody's completely one-sided, but if it's 10%, I think they worked out that over the years, 4% of golfers have been left-handed, elite golfers, but over half of baseball players are left-handed. So there's actually a model for it, which a predictive model for it, which seems to work quite well. So go on the internet and have a look at Abrams and Panaggio that have done some stuff about it. But baseball hugely, table tennis more than 10%, way more. When I was about at my best, certainly when I was number 10 in the England men's, I was the 6th left-hander in that list.
Yeah. Desmond Douglas, Graham Sandley, Kenny Jackson.
Douglas, Graham Sandley, Kenny Jackson, Skylar Andrew, Dave Wells, Steve Mills, Steve Scowcroft. I mean, that's more than 6, but over a couple of years, all of those players were left-handed, and they're all top 10 England men.
That's an interesting one, Colin, because again, probably back in the 80s or late 80s, when I was coming through as a player, there was not a lot of left-handers at all. We had Brian Wright, probably, who was one of the top players, and then there was maybe Callum Gerard coming in maybe a bit lower down, but there was not many left-handers at all. There was a lot of left-handed juniors. Well, there was quite a few juniors. Maybe didn't go through into the seniors. Jim Wilsons and your Gordon Waddles, and all fantastic players. But yeah, there was a real minority of left-handers when I was playing.
And you think that was a help that you were in a quiet time for left-handers?
Massive help. I came through. I was lucky to come through at the time when, you know, a lot of the top players were retiring almost, and because I was a left-hander in the minority, I had a big advantage. So
I think I was when I was young, maybe 18, 19, I think, when the Scottish team started training with Lee Chow and Martin Mazu was there before the Commonwealth in 2014. Like, I was maybe sitting outside top 10 in Scotland, and I worked my way up to top 4 or 5, whatever. But the reason I get invited to the training to start with is because I was left-handed. Like, they needed a left-hander player in that group. So they were saying, they kind of came round and said, listen, like, we need a left-hander in this group. We know Chris is going to have a lot of potential, this and that. So the opportunity I've got from being left-handed training-wise was much, much better. A lot of the players, even English guys, used to go down and train in England quite a lot, and they were the same. That, okay, let's bring Chris down. We've not got a left-hander in this group. We need a left. we need a good left-hander here. You know, so I get more training opportunities because I was left-handed, for example, because there maybe wasn't many left-handers and people wanted to train with a left-hander.
Yeah, fantastic.
Interesting. And according to research, there's far more left-handed men than women. Again, is this research just made up? And because it's on the internet, we all say it's true, or would you say that is they've got the facts right? Anyone want to pick that up, Colin? No
idea actually on that one.
Yeah.
No idea.
I've done any research on that.
Yeah.
Again, I'm trying to think of left-handed ladies,
women
players, and
all being politically correct, not getting involved in a subject regarding.
There we are.
I don't want to get right-handed, but it sounds right. If I go to a tournament, are a higher proportion of boys, men, left-handed than women and girls? Probably. I can't remember.
I would agree.
Yeah. I mean, during the week, people have been putting all their favourite all-time left-footed greats. Pele, probably the best footballer of all time. Gary Sober's the best all-rounder of all time. There wasn't so many women, but obviously Martina Navratilova was the name that came up. But lots of, a whole list kept coming through. Sekretan, and as you say, Ulf Bengtsson, and the list just went on and on and on. And obviously our very own Desmond Douglas, and the list went on.
Just before you move on, it's actually done a bit of research on that, just best left-handers. I mean, talking about golf, the Masters is a classic example where it's advantage being a left-hander. I mean, Phil Mickelson, Mickelson's won it twice, Bubba Watson twice, Mike Weir, who was a bit of an unknown that won it. In cricket, Ben Stokes plays left-handed. Brian Lara, Collins, for example, a baseball earlier, like Babe Ruth, probably the greatest baseball player of all time, left-hander. It seems to be some of the, like Wayne Gretzky, left-handed, that's one missed out. Ayrton Senna, left-handed. So I think some of the most iconic sportsmen that have ever lived have all been left-handed. So I don't know if there's anything in that, but it could be that.
Well, and Jones, well before all of your time, Colin had only been 7 when she won Wimbledon, left-handed. British lady. Also got 3 World Table Tennis finals as well, Anne Jones.
And at the same time, Rod Laver, right? John McEnroe. But we can throw out lots of good left-handers.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's still in a minority overall compared to right-handers. They just Is it because they're atypical that we think there are more of them? We just notice.
I think it's the iconic names, isn't it? It's names that there. But I suppose if you really thought about it, there's an iconic right-handed names that go with it as well. But it's just that the names that sort of stick out when you think about it.
Yeah, Roger Close says Maradona.
Yeah.
So if you're not going to go for Pele, maybe you go for Maradona. They're both left-footed.
Yeah. Okay, it was interesting because I think it was Pete put on when he was learning to play. One of his coaches was Billy Gibbs, who was left-handed, and I think of my time as the national coach down in England. Mike Kimber, who was probably a superb coach from the southwest of England, he was a left-handed coach, but there wasn't that many. If I think of all the coaches, now obviously 3 of you here are coaches, you're left-handers, so left-handed coaches, do you have a view on, I mean, is it that a left-hander, when he's coaching, the right-hander always gets a mirror image of what you're doing, which probably makes it easier? If you think about it, if you was in a dance studio, the dance teacher is going totally the opposite way to what you're going in order so he or she can be in line. So left-handed coaches, Colin, do you have a view on left-handed coaches?
Yeah, well, I've not had one. Pete Simpson was a left-handed coach, but not a top player, and he didn't used to get his bat out and demonstrate. So I didn't really have left-handed coaches other than my dad, who was my first and obviously ongoing coach and helper. I haven't seen many left-handed coaches. Now you mention it, but as a player, I think mirror learning, someone at the other side being a good right-handed technical model, and then I'm watching that as a left-hander as if it's a mirror. I think that's a huge advantage to a left-handed learner to learn from a right-handed coach. So I've always thought, because I'm a left-handed, I am one. Because I'm a left-handed coach, what do? Well, there are times that we try and do forehand across the diagonal. So I'll play right-handed, so that it's not confusing for people. But I use a lot of, step in and practice that little forehand touch that we were talking about. And they can do exactly the same thing as a mirror image. So I think, right-handed students of mine have an advantage because they're learning through that mirror. I think the mirror thing is a big thing.
Chris?
Yeah, I think, as I said, one of my first coaches was Terry McClellan from Drumchapel, and I think he's a left-hander. And I still remember him telling me at a young age, Chris, you want to do that lefty serve against the righty. Or, for example, if I was getting chucked out wide and I had to play a forehand, he's like, take the pace off it, give them a lot of side spin back, make it super awkward for the person you're playing. I think because he was a lefty, he could tell me tips and information to start building my lefty game and start giving me tactics that are only for a lefty, if that makes sense. So I think that's probably an advantage for me when I was young to get that kind of information from a left-handed coach, and it wasn't a case of a right-hander maybe not knowing these things. Terry knew exactly. He's played the game. He knew what to do in certain areas for a lefty. So I think that was an advantage for me.
Yeah.
Pete?
Yeah, similar to Chris in that, like you said, I had Billy Gibbs as a coach when I was a younger player. And great all-round coach, Billy was. And I think he did, being a lefty, he would give off, you know, he had the experience as well of playing at tournaments, and tactically as well, he could give me some, you know, instructions on the best way to go forward as a lefty. There were actually 3 other lefties in that group as well, which was quite interesting. So it was, I think he would have been pleased with that. But after Billy, I mean, I've had maybe 5 or 6 coaches all been right-handed. So not sure that it makes a massive difference. Interesting, you're talking about the mirror thing. When in our club here out in Haddington, we have, I mean, maybe one left-hander, and most of them are right-handed. So I thought instinctively I should learn to play as a right-hander. So I developed a right-handed forehand, rubbish backhand, but decent forehand. And when I was demoing, I was doing it with playing right-handed, but probably not the right thing. And I should have been demoing as a left-hander, like you say, like Colin says, the mirror image across the table for a right-hander. But food for thought.
When I took up coaching, or certainly when I became the national coach, virtually every coaching session I went to throughout the UK, the right-handers would all be playing a backhand, then the left-hander would be playing a forehand, or the right-handers would be playing a forehand and the left-handers would be playing a backhand. And it was always the left-handers who were being made to change. And when I was training coaches, I used to say, probably Colin, I was training him, you make the right-hander change, because if it is 1 in 10 or 1 in 9, then the right-hander's only got to change. If it's a forehand exercise, the right-hander's only got to change 1 in 10 rather than making the. But it was a trick. Nearly every coaching session I went to, it was the left-hander who had to do the opposite to the rest of the group, but certainly not in my sessions. Colin, was it something you experienced as a player, that everybody was doing a forehand and you was doing a backhand, or everybody was doing a backhand and you were doing a forehand in your younger days, or not?
Yeah, in my younger days, I remember I was the one compromising. So if it was forehand to backhand down the line, then we'd both be doing forehands, and I'd be the one, because they're trying to keep it the same line on the same table, so it made sense for the coach. But when you came along and you said exactly that, you said make the right-hander compromise, because they've got to compromise once rather than the left-hander compromising 10 times. That made all sorts of sense to me and helped. And then probably I would influence other players and coaches after that to say, okay, we'll do it that way, but now can we do it this way? And as people get more experienced, they can slip into a different mode quite easily. So you can kind of even it up a bit.
And Chris, was that the say? Did you notice that you was always able to do?
I think if somebody was doing like a Falkenberg exercise, like backhand and then forehand for the backhand and then forehand out wide, obviously if they're doing that by right-hander, they're probably going to play cross-court to the other person's backhand. Most of the time, if I was doing that exercise and I was blocking or spinning, it would mean that first backhand's going down the line. So I don't think exercises did change, and I did like when I trained by lefty, I felt it more natural playing backhands cross-court and blocking cross-court than it did if I was doing a backhand block down the line. And I know some coaches might say, Chris, you could block with your forehand, but the coaches we had, it was always kind of backhand block. And my backhand block's safe. It's one of the, it's super consistent. That's probably why, because if I'm training with lefties, I'm just playing backhand block a lot of the time. But no, it kind of annoyed me a wee bit. It wasn't too bad. I just kind of get used to it and got my head down and got on with it.
Yeah, my saying used to remember. I used to say, "Treasure the left-handers." Do you remember that was one of ours? Yeah, Pete.
Yeah, I think whether it was a society thing that probably in the old days the lefties would have to play second fiddle and have to, do the exercises that the right-handers would be aiming to do. Not necessarily now, I'm hoping. And I know that Colin and Chris were saying about their backhands. I'm not sure my backhand was absolutely terrible. I'm not sure why, because people always say, well, you had right-handers loop into your backhand, you would develop all that control. But for some reason, whether it was just me, my backhand was so bad I had to run around them my forehand all the time. So I'm not sure whether the training sessions work for me, but on my backhand.
Mark, anything for the boys or anything on you?
Well, no. So I think John McNamara sort of asked that question of the group anyway about being left-handed making any difference to coaching. So I think these guys have covered it very well about the sort of difference and the compromises and what you have to do. So other questions on YouTube. There's a lot of comments coming in tonight, which basically regarding left-handed from Sports Vision Training. Mention other left-handed coaches in Scotland like Stuart Wallace from Joan Smith. So yeah, some sort of good comments coming in. I just want to move on to a question of my own, sort of we may come to it anyway. But talking about the game of doubles, and obviously it's a well-known fact of table tennis players of having a left-handed, right-handed combination. Colin sort of mentioned Graham Stanley was your doubles partner and successful.
Yeah, what a nightmare playing left-hander playing with a left-hander. What a nightmare that was.
Yeah, sort of playing that way, that didn't really work out. But obviously a left-handed, right-handed combination. Speaking from my own personal perspective, national doubles semi-final this year with Stuart Armitage, left-hander. Need to try and mention that in whenever I can, but that for us that worked great. Pete, back in the day, was Colin Robertson your doubles partner, Robbo?
Robbo was my foil, and we played many times. We had a great game. I'm going to throw this in as well. English Open, and we took Perry and Preen in a very, very good game of doubles. Very, very close. So that was respectable. However, my two titles were with Stuart Crawford. So he's got a very sore back because he carried me through all those. Yeah, he would basically, Stuart would say, okay, just keep the ball on the table, Pete. Keep the ball on the table and I'll finish it off. So that was really my role. My role was just to hold, and then he would come in and bang, put it away.
And then Chris, what about, do you play a lot of doubles with your brother? Obviously, right-handed or other combinations?
I think some of my biggest wins have came from doubles, like as far as world rankings and like tournaments and stuff like that. I've beaten a lot of good players, much better players and I wouldn't beat in singles. But that righty and lefty, it just works perfect. It's so easy in table tennis. It's as Colin was saying, I've played last season in British Premier League. I played with a left hand on doubles, and the first two matches were like, right, this cannot work. I just could not get our head around it. It's so obviously because I'm just so used to playing righties. You're not having playing with right-handers. It's so easy to walk into the table and walk back out. You're not chasing around each other. We're serving from the same corner. I think that's another massive advantage in doubles where right-handers are technically serving for the corner. Maybe they don't usually serve from. We're serving from the same corner. There's a lot of advantages there. It's as I said, some of the best matches and results I've got are with Richie or whoever else in doubles.
Colin, any thoughts on the right-handed, left-handed advantage? Obviously, it's clear the advantage as Chris has pointed out. Well, it's just works so well.
Yeah. So all the points. I think Chris makes a really good point about left-hander is serving from the side that they normally would, backhand corner. So that's cool. And you're just out of each other's way. The right-hander's recovery position's over here, your recovery position's over here. You keep out of each other's way, and if they put the ball anywhere near the middle, you're both just swinging forehands, and you're not in each other's way at all. So that's great. The other thing about being a left-hander in doubles is that you can flick with your forehand. If they're serving short, you just stand. The table's not in the way. You stand around the side of the table, and I used to love receiving serve in doubles. I just stand around the side of the table and just flick either way. I played with John Suter a lot as a senior right-hander, and he was lovely at topspin against a slower ball. So my job was to make the other person play it late and lift it, and as soon as they lifted it, John was in. So I, again, like you, Pete, I was the more the consistent player, the person that would get the ball up, and then my partner would be the one to put it away. Again, I wasn't the power player, and that worked great. But it can work because with Graham Sandley, we won. We got bronze in the European Youth Championships, which is the only medal I got in the European Youth Championships. I just felt with Graham, he was quite backhand dominated actually, and a big guy. So I just felt like I was running 400 meters around him every two shots, which was hard work. But we managed to navigate it. And so what I did after we started playing together, I went off and I watched Eric Lind and Michael Appelgren playing together. So watching two left-handers, and I could see that Appelgren was happy playing his backhand outside his base here. So actually, I let Graham stand on his corner, and I ran around him. It meant that I was playing backhands from outside my base quite a bit, but I could control that. And if I could get them to lift the ball again, that would be the plan. And then Graham would be in with the big guns. So no doubt that it's a significant advantage to be a left-hander in doubles, unless you've got another one with you.
Interesting, because some say Desmond Douglas' best event was actually doubles. I mean, he won the European Championships with Linda Jarvis. And as I mentioned on the Zoomcast 2 weeks ago, when we had Nicky Jarvis here, the European League in those days was massive. It was massive. And Des went the whole season, and he won 6 men's doubles, and he won all six of the mixed doubles. And there's and European Championships as well, which is interesting.
Just very quickly, I think it's just worth mentioning, because obviously it was on Sky Sports today in the event of Black History Month. There was a piece on Desmond Douglas today on Sky Sports, and I think as we're talking about left-handers tonight, one of our greatest left-handers we've ever had. So I think for the viewers, anyone, I think it's also available online. But there's an absolute fantastic piece on Desmond Douglas and the things he'd done in table tennis. So it's definitely worth having a watch.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah. If I can move on, because we've only got about 5 minutes. And it was interesting because one of the messages that's just come up is Richard Yule. I didn't know this until a few weeks ago. He's actually left-handed. He just played table tennis right-handed. I just didn't know that. So this is the last question, really. Do lefties have more ambidexterity than right-handers, Colin, do you think?
I don't know, but it seems to me that the left-handers that I speak to are left-handed at some things and right-handed at others. So if I go through my list, I play table tennis left-handed, I write left-handed. If I pick up any other racket sport, I'm left-handed. When I do two-handed things, normally I'm right-handed. So golf, I'm right-handed. Cricket, I'm right-handed. And for me, that is totally logical. That's totally logical, because I'm just pulling here and giving it the power. So I don't understand right-handers playing right-handed at two-handed things. This just seems to be a misnomer to me. But anyway, my brother's completely the opposite. Cricket, I bowl left-handed and bat right-handed. My brother bowls right-handed and bats left-handed. Ice cream, definitely right-handed. No question about it. Definitely an ice volley is right-handed. Snooker, I'm left-handed with right eye dominance. So it's a bit of a mismatch. So in terms of, are they more ambidextrous? I'm not ambidextrous in terms of I can do either. I can't do anything with either.
I see.
There are some things that I do clearly one or clearly the other. But when you speak to right-handed people, like Richard Yule, you go, oh yeah, I'm actually left-handed at lots of things. So there's a lot of mixing going on. I don't know if left-handers typically have more mixed than right-handers. I don't know.
Yeah. Chris?
I'm probably in the same boat as Colin there. I'm not too sure. Obviously, I've said the only sport I kind of play right-handed is golf, but I probably know the answer to that. The answer to that is because left-handed golf clubs aren't widely available. Like,
that's so sad.
You pick up a table tennis bat with your left, with your right, you can play. You don't need a left-handed table tennis bat with golf clubs. You do. So I ended up, when I was a kid, when my dad's got golf clubs or whatever, okay, Chris, on you go, play right-handed. But no, that is literally the only thing I do. Every sport, I'm left-handed, and I'm comfortable doing it that way.
Pete?
Yeah, I'm again ditto what the guys are saying. Although I'm pretty much mostly left-handed, and then I'll be right-footed football, right side on the golf as well. So I'm not sure what the research is for the ambidextrous, but yeah, I would say it's a bit of both, mishmash really.
Good. Okay, have we got anything from YouTube, Mark?
We've got one question that's actually come in differently, sort of on our selectors conversation from Gordon Muir, and it's for Colin. And he also touched on your son Sam earlier and his path towards becoming a modern defender. Gordon's just wanting to know just sort of how that come about that path, and then any tips on how to develop the style in Scotland.
You're talking about my role in helping develop a chopper?
Yes. So sort of developing your son's path as well as then maybe how do you get the sort of tips on of a young defender in Scotland, how do you push that forward? I think.
Okay. Very, very quickly. The first part I could spend forever talking about the the process by which you aim for help someone to become a top player. One thing that we did with Sam is that we got both kids playing just for coordination when they were very, very young, and I think that's a good thing for all parents to do. Sam could clearly do it a bit, and being a table tennis family, I encouraged it. I encouraged it in Adam as well. Sam was clearly a little bit more able, even though he was younger on average. Even though Adam's okay and he's a beautiful coach, but Sam was clearly a bit better as a player. And when he got to 9 or 10, what we did, we put him in a little competition, and he'd been practicing all week up to the table hitting. And then what happened in the first tournament was that they served, he pushed it back, they hit it, and Sam, for some reason, was at the barriers, lobbing. And I'm going, what's all this about? It's completely weird. So just in terms of his temperament, when it came to a match, he just ended up like hitting his bat on the screens at the back. And I'm saying, what's going on, Sam? He says, what do you mean? I'm just playing. So he was very playful, and we couldn't keep him up to the table in a tournament. So I took him to Pete Charters, who coached Matthew Syed, and we said, should we have a play at making him a chopper? So Sam said, what does that mean? And we gave him a bat. Well, in fact, it's try over both sides. So we didn't want to use a pimple or anything strange to start with. And I'd encourage that, just use normal medium speed rubbers. And he just had a go at it and we said, do you like it? And he says, yeah. He says, come back next week, we'll do it again. So he became a chopper through that process of just what his temperament was like in competition. In terms of becoming a good, very, very good player, I know that for most players, if they play a couple of times a week and then get to 15 years of age, and then someone goes, they could be an Olympic champion. Not that I'm expecting Sam to be. It's too late by then. So you actually have to start pretty early. It's a fairly early specialisation sport, table tennis. So I thought, how can I introduce this issue without it being a pressure to a young kid? So I said to him, how good do you want to be at this? And he said, yeah, I'd like to be quite good at this. And I said, okay, there is a way of doing that. And there are a few ways of doing that, but not millions. I said, okay, well, shall we pretend then that, you said, you know about the Olympics in 2012 in London? Yeah. Well, the next one's in Rio, 2016. Yeah, okay. Well, the one after that, we don't know where it's going to be yet, but there will be one every 4 years. So should we just pretend that next week it's this Olympic Games in 2020 that we don't know where it is yet, but we'll say Rio because we know Rio de Janeiro is the next one. Okay, so he's like 11. Okay, then. Okay, so we'll play the game of preparing for the Olympic Games. I said, great. I said, well, we'll do it for a week. So on the Monday, I just thought, okay, obviously he's not playing in that competition that week, but if I think ahead 12 years, I'm going to do with him what I would do if I knew for sure he was going to be Olympic champion in 12 years. They'd say, let's track that back. What did you do on that date 12 years ago? I'm going to do that. And that's what I did. So I did that. And I said, obviously age appropriately and what have you, but no pressure at all. How did you enjoy that, Sam? Playful? Yeah, good. Peter Charters did his bit. I did my bit on the Tuesday, did some more, had a day off Wednesday on the third. And at the end of the week, I said, what do you think? And he says, I quite like that. It was okay. I said, all right, then. Well, we're not trying to be that good and we're not trying to be serious about it. But tell me if you want me to do it again next week, just for the week. And then that'll be it. And he went, yeah, we'll do it again next week. And he did it the next week. I go, okay, do you fancy doing it next week? Yeah, okay, we'll do it next week. And so after a while, we just kind of got into the habit of how to do it in a structured, progressive way with my kind of knowledge of what I did about the pathway and how to generate it. And we made a game of it. And after a while, it became just sort of unconscious and he was happy to play. What some people don't know is that Sam had 3.5 years off sick. He was in his bedroom. He didn't go to school at all. He got no exercise. He barely came downstairs. No social, no exercise, no anything. And that was 3.5 years between the age of 13 and 16 and a half. And tearful thinking about it, disastrous as a parent, helpless. So he's recovered quite well. When he came back to it, he picked it up quite quickly, and he starts the season there's a number of good players around him, but technically he starts the season England under 21 number 1. But he's got his issues. There's all sorts of reasons he could fall off the wagon tomorrow. whether that is gets bored with it, wine, women, song, mental health, injury. It's a very, very tenuous pathway. But to answer the question, yeah, find someone that knows how the pathway really works, because otherwise, if you do it by random, by the time you know enough to make them good, they're already too old to they've got too many, if you like, bad habits, or not enough in the first half of their kind of Olympic prep, as it were. But 99% chance that whatever you do, they won't make it.
Colin, I'm going to throw this out there, and this is a big statement, that after doing so many of these, I think that's one of my favourite answers, or most insightful answers to a question that I've heard. So thank you for that. I think a lot of people take something from that.
I think it matters, and I think a lot of parents, like, they're kind of having a go at it, but you really, it's too much of a science now to just do it at random and expect to do it. So, I don't think most people should be trying to do that. We were just in a very unique situation. But if you are going to do it, then the parents need to take it very, very seriously.
Dad, if you're watching, that's where you went wrong, just so you know.
Yeah, but not push that onto the kids. So.
It just
thanks,
the long answer was excellent. We'll just pick up just before we go, because there's something really interesting. You said that you taught Sam to play properly before he went on a funny bat or a pimple bat. Now, one of the many reasons why Jill Parker was our best ever player, and that is, you can't argue with that. You don't win the Europeans, and you don't. You're not sixth in the world. You don't win the top 12 3 times if you're not that good. But Jill learned to chop properly with two sides the same, and then she progressed onto short pimples, I think, and then onto long pimples. And I think there's far too many shortcuts where he's got a bad backhand, let's stick pimples on. So a really good answer, Colin. Right, as always, we've run out of time. Chris and Pete, have you got any burning questions to ask Colin before we wind up?
I'll ask Colin. So what position are you in just now then, Colin? Are you head coach? What is it you're doing down south?
Okay. Well, I started Corby Smash in 2015, Open started 2016. Cost me a lot of time and money, but put pretty much everything into it. Lost a lot, had to move facilities. We've got 2 facilities now. One's closed for COVID, one's open. And so we with Henry are working it, and it's kind of working at capacity, but it's much smaller. So I'm doing a bit of coaching there, but Henry's doing most of the hard yards. I'm in touch with Sam many times a day, but he's living and training in Sweden the whole time. I went out there last week to see him. Just first time I've seen him properly for a while, but we exchange videos and what have you, and he's got coaches out there in Sweden. And I'm just working hard repairing the finances after starting to Corby Smash. So I'm just doing non-table tennis work, self-employed and doing consulting and coaching stuff normally outside of sport, but sometimes across different sports.
Great stuff.
Yes, Colin, I was just going to ask that. I was in Sweden last year, I think, at the same time as Sam.
Yeah.
And I was just going to ask, what's he doing this year? Where's he playing? Where's he training?
He's at Eslöv.
Right.
Yeah. Is that where you were? That's where you were?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, he told me you were there, yeah.
So is he playing league over there? Is he playing league in Germany? Or...
No, he's playing 3 leagues. He's playing Swedish league, Denmark, Danish league, and also French league. But the only one he played Swedish league last year. Hasn't played his first one in Sweden this year or Denmark, but he's played in France a couple of times.
That's good.
So,
Good to know.
Yeah, we'll see you. We'll see you out there.
Right, Mark. Is anything come up late on YouTube? Because I've sneaked an extra 7 or 8 minutes tonight.
No, nothing that we haven't covered off, Dave.
Brilliant. Well, look, again, kind of thanks to all our lefties. to Chris and Pete, who have both been on before and very well known in Scottish table tennis circles, for both players and coaching. And as I said at the start, Colin, you're no stranger to these shores. You're a regular visitor. You ran the summer, you directed our summer school last year. You was due, you and Adam. Adam was a big hit. Lot of compliments, you know, if you can pass them on to Adam if he's listening. A lot of people said, is Adam coming back this year? They didn't say, is Colin coming back? So we better say that, but no.
I'll send him up on his own.
Yeah, send him up on his own. And as always, Mark, thank you very much indeed. And next week we've got Nikki Jarvis, and once again we'll be continuing the theme on being a table tennis parent. Or a parent in sport, and also we'll be looking at Nicky's winding down his playing career and moving into coaching. Did you and Nicky would have clashed, wouldn't you, Colin? You would have been coming towards the end.
That's right. Yeah, he was coming towards the end. He'd had his first back operation, and I started to beat him at that point, but I wasn't as good as he was. At his best, he was much better than I was at my best. And I think there's only 2 people that have ever won 3 against Japan for England, and Nicky's one of those 2. Amazing.
We talked about that in great depth last week. Anyway, thank you, everyone. We'll just have 5 minutes behind closed doors. Brilliant night, and we're back to Monday next week. This was a one-off because Colin's he's otherwise engaged on a Tuesday.